Sunday Miketz Tovshim Pedala, the Felach and Chanukah, Brucham Abba Hashem Hashem, English has the big cover to have with us. Everybody coming to the Shia of Rav Yakov Zev Smishlit every Sunday. Today is such an important topic. I just see the words Veahavta Lere'acha Kamocha, Chayecha Koidman. This is the ganze Leben von Aid. Today she is Nidwas is Dana Beryl Rosenfeld, Nishmas Imoy Yechevet Bas Rabbi Yoel. Now Rabbi Smishlit.
We hear different shilas, but I always find the most challenging is to be nadum l'chaveros. For example, someone was been attending a shir of a chashavara for years, and then he found a shir that's better for him. He's learning better by the other shir, but he leaves this shir, the Rav will feel bad, the Magachi will feel bad. In yeshiva, we have a problem of when Bachar Meis, they want to change chavrusas, and they get a better chavrusa, but they're going to drop someone. What's it going to be with him? The old question: if someone's cold and he closes the window, and someone else is hot, and he opens the window or puts on the air conditioner, someone's hot and some are cold. In camp, we have a bacha wakes up early in the morning, wakes up his roommates, and the questions are really endless. But I think the point is, it's true. You want to have the windows open, or you want to change the chavrusa, or you want to change the shir. But what about someone else? Don't forget the Veahavta Lere'acha Kamocha, as the Yishalmi quotes in the Dharm Perik Tes, Mishnah Gimel, Rav Akiva said, Veahavta Lere'acha Kamocha, Zeh Klal Gadol b'Torah. Do we need more than that? That this is the cornerstone of our Torah? But it's more than that. We know the Gemara in Shabbos, of Lamed Aleph, where the Goy came to Hillel, he wanted Kol HaTorah Kula on one foot. So Hillel told him, Da'aloch Sani, L'chavrach Lo'isavid, Zui Kol HaTorah Kula. So, just this alone gives us a tremendous sensitivity. What Veahavta Lere'acha Kamocha is, either it's the Klal Gadol b'Torah, or it's Kol HaTorah Kula. And the fact that the pasuk concludes, Veahavta Lere'acha Kamocha, Ani Hashem, you become a partner with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So it doesn't, there's a lot more to say, but I think we're very convinced the importance of Veahavta Lere'acha Kamocha. But the question is, what does it mean, Kamocha? Is it humanly possible that someone could love someone else like he loves himself? The aleph of our Torah is Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu ba b'chunyan b'yosav. There is never a mitzvah that's given that we can't do. What does it mean, Kamocha? The Ramban and the Cheskuni and other Rishonim, in fact, the Ramban's lashon is it's a guzma, it's an aflaga. Cheskuni says ef shalasayis. So what does it mean, Kamocha? But the question is much stronger. Imagine if someone has only one pair of shoes and his friend has no shoes. Do we say because Veahavta Lere'acha Kamocha he has to give someone else his own shoes? Doesn't sound right. But how do you know it's not right? So we all know it's a Gemara, it's a tragic shaila. In Bava Metzia Samach Beis, there are two people in a desert and there's only one jug of water. If they share it, they both die. If one drinks it, he will survive, the other one will die. So says the Gemara that Ben Betura said, sorry, you can't take the water for yourself. You have to share it. Either both going to die, worry about it then. But Ben Betura says the person can't take the water for himself, obviously because you can't favor your life over someone else's. Listen to the Gemara. However, At shebar Rav Akiva v'limed v'chei achicha ima chayecha koim l'chayei chaverei. Rav Akiva says the famous lashon chayecha koidmin. Now this is the Gzeres HaKasav, we'll refer to as chayecha koim. You go first. So now I ask you a simple question. Isn't that a stira? Rav Akiva says kamoicha, and the same Rav Akiva says chayecha koidmin. And that's the Ramban's second question. What does it mean, kamoicha? Rav Akiva himself says chayecha koidmin. But it's noteworthy, years ago, I once wanted to learn the sugya of Veahavta Lere'acha Kamocha. So as my derech always is, we start from the Gemara. And I want to ask you, where do you find in the Gemara halachas about Veahavta Lere'acha Kamocha? Does it say in the Gemara that if you buy a cheese Danish, give half to your friend? Doesn't say that. So, Re'ezeh Pella Ma'oid. There are 6 Gemaras in Shas, Sanhedrin, Memhein and Beis, Bava Kama and Aleph, Saita, Daf Ches, Psachim, Ayin Hey, Ksubas, Lamed Zayin. 6 Gemaras in Shas about Veahavta Lere'acha Kamocha halacha. They're all about how to give a Rosh and Mises Bezdin. Remember the Gemaras? The Gemara says the Mishnah Sanhedrin Mem Hey, the base of skill has to be very high. Why? So the Gemara, Veahavta Lere'acha Kamocha Bror Lo Misa Yafa. You're giving a Rosh and Mises Bezdin. If you're not considerate enough to give it in the most painless way, that's a violation of Veahavta Lere'acha Kamocha. Now that speaks volumes of what it means, Avos Yisrael, even to a Rasha. But what's important for us now, Tosfos asks, that is Veahavta Lere'acha Kamocha, so felt Zachen, Veahavta Lere'acha Kamocha. You have to choose a case of a Rasha. Zok Tosfos, yeah. You know why? Lere'acha Kamocha lo shaykh mechayim, dechayecha koidmin. So Tosfos is asking the Ramban's kasha. That's why the Gemara says 6 Gemaras about how to give Mises Bezdin, because it's not true Kamocha. So here we have a plea. This is our Klal Godel B'Torah. This is our Kol Torah Kula. And the members of the Magen Avram in the beginning of Siman Mem Vav writes, before you start Shachris every morning, you should mekabel the mitzvah of Veahavta Lere'acha Kamocha. So I'm going to ask you a question. So if you did it this morning, what did you think? What is the mitzvah of Veahavta Lere'acha Kamocha? Is it Kamocha? Is Chayecha Koidmin? What's it all about? A mitzvah that's the Kol Torah Kula, and we're not sure what it means. So the emphasis on a simple level, and that's the Cheskuni says, Veahavta means, Kamocha means just like you enjoy people help, so be nice to him. So it's not a amount, it's an attitude. You enjoy people help you, so help someone else. But my question is, so Lamaisa, is it Kamocha literally? Is it a guzma? Is chayecha koidmin? So the emphasis, and this is what I saw a number of Rishonim say, Avada, you're not mechuyev to love someone kamocha. It's not shaykh and it's not true. But I'll give you a practical mashal. Let's say your friend asks you for help this afternoon. He needs help, he's moving, he needs some help. Now you're busy, it's a Sunday off, your children home from yeshiva, and you want to spend time at home. What should you do? You go first, or your friend goes first? So the way the Rishonim say, imagine what you would expect him to do if you needed the help. In other words, turn the story around. You need the help, and you ask your friend to help. Would you expect him to help on a Sunday Chanukah when his children are home from yeshiva? If the answer is yes, then help the other person. In other words, you were using dalach sani lechavach loisav in a positive way. So that's the shir. And there's a sefer, one of the early achrayim of the Ksava Kabbalah on this parsha. He says this yisoid, and he gives a few examples. But what I thought was very nice, he says kamoicha means vidu. He writes it in Yiddish. The way you would expect someone to treat you, you think that's fair? You expect it from him? Good. Do it to him. And he says that this kolay atoy v'chesed she'adam maskim b'daite v'goyim b'libay she'roi l'kabel me'ahuvay. You expect someone to do it to you? Do it to him. And the emphasis I found in the Chayvus Alavavas Cheshbon Nefesh Gimel Chav Beis, you look at the Rambam Hilchos Avel Yud Dalet Chav, they both say the same yisoid. Taka kamoicha means vidu, the way you want him to treat you. In other words, I'll put it this way, you probably never forget. No, there's no chiyuv to give him your shoes. The chiyuv is put yourself in his shoes. Make believe that you're him, and then you'll know what to do. Now we have kamoicha as a very doable approach. Now, I think the hezbah is, because the real sakana is a person, a human being by nature, is selfish. A child's born, and there's only me in the whole world. And that's the sakana of living aniv afsi oid, or Shimon Shkopin. It has a beautiful akdama. If you have time today, in akdama to Shara Yosh, there's so much chachma, so much kedusha in that. He teaches ani la'atzmi. If a person is living me, mo ani. Like, of what value is life? We live in the me generation. I once saw someone wearing a T-shirt. It says, I love me. Now, it's better if people, think like that, but he's not embarrassed. But that's the Goyish Welt. But that's the antithesis of Veahavta Lere'acha Kamocha. But we have to live, like the Nefesh Chaim used to say, Shezeh kol adam loy la'atzmai nivra rak l'hoyel achrini b'chol asher yimtze b'koicha la'asois. We have to turn the ani la'atzmi mo ani into loy la'atzmai nivra. How do you do that? That's Veahavta Lere'acha Kamocha. Because the Yesod, the human being, is, the way the Rishonim already say, Adam nifel kafi pulaisav. A person is affected by what he does. When someone gives, he becomes a giver. When someone gives, he develops an ahava. Ahava, the shayrish is hav, yohiv. So it's not so much how much you give. The ik is, don't live in the world of me. So once you're giving to Yenim what you expect to get for yourself, you're okay. Because like the Derech Eretz Zut, the Perek Beis says, Im ata roitz li David b'havas chavercha. You want to steigen Avas Yisrael? Have a noise of a noise in b'tevasai. There's no school list, there's no secrets, no shortcuts. You give, you develop the ahava. The Cheskuni says, see that idea also. Just have a cheshik to give others. But Rabbi say, I think there's much more to this brilliant Yesod Ve'ahavta Lere'acha Kamocha. You know, there's a story that everybody knows. We mentioned it earlier, in fact, in Shabbos Lamed Aleph, where the guy wanted to call her kula regel achas. So Hillel told him, "Allah sani lechavrach lo'isavid." Zehu kol Torah kula. Now, there's no doubt about it. Hillel meant the pasuk Ve'ahavta Lere'acha Kamocha. So the Mefarshim ask, okay, so if you think the ik of the Torah is Ve'ahavta Lere'acha Kamocha, so say that. Why did Hillel make an eged chiddush? Dalach sani lechavach lo yisavit. Why do that? Get to the point. The ikke is after Lere'acha Kamocha. So I once said pshat, and I think it's emes. Hillel realized you can't tell a guy that Ve'ahavta Lere'acha Kamocha is our Torah because it's not true, and you can't do it. Even the Heilige Ramban struggled. What does it mean after Lere'acha Kamocha? It's not Kamocha. So Hillel had an idea. He's going to make it more practical. Dalach sani lechavrech lo yisaved in the sur meira, in the zehiris b'rab nechaveroi. That is shaykh dalach. That's shaykh kamoicha. You know, I was once by a chassid, and there was a full table of people, and one person made a joke, and everybody laughed. It was a funny joke, rather. But the problem is, he made a joke about someone sitting by the table, and I just witnessed Ritzicha. You know. Mal b'chavei b'rabim, mutter she, you know, she apalat kivshan ha'esh, and kilo harga, the Chazal tell us. So I went over to him in private. I said, by the way, I don't know if you noticed, you realize, but you mavayis some b'rabim. He goes, come on, why don't you chill out? I was just joking. I don't know what that means, chill out. So and I realized afterwards, he wasn't a bad person, but he wasn't thinking. You know, when will he realize how bad the avla was? When they made a joke about him. You know, then he understood that how it's Ritzicha. And I understood a word I saw both Rav Chatzkel Levenstein and Rav Volvo, the same word. Achzor is a terrible thing, an achzor. But achzor is really two words, achzor. If you're not thinking of him, you know, I made a joke, I didn't think. Oh, you're right, afterwards, maybe. But achzor brings achzorius. So, the way to avoid all the Ve'ahavta Lere'acha is the Dalach sani. Get yourself involved. Do you know how much it hurts? So why are you doing it to Yenim? And Taka the Marsha and the Meretz Chayes on this Gemara say this kamat the same Yesod. In fact, the Marsha adds, if you notice what leads up to Ve'ahavta Lere'acha Kamocha, Lo Sisna, Lo Sikoim, Lo Sitor, because Ve'ahavta Lere'acha Kamocha is really in the lois, in the sur meira, and that's shaykh kamocha. And we look in the Targum Yonason, one of the Tanoim, on this part of Ve'ahavta Lere'acha Kamocha, he says, "Demon at sani loch leisavid lei." He's learning that the pasuk Ve'ahavta Lere'acha Kamocha is not the asay toiv, because for that it's not chayecha. For that it's chayecha koidmin. It's the sur meira, it's the zehiras, it's the ticket to olam haba. Gemara says in Brachos Chavches, his haru b'kvoid chavreichem, and that shaykh kamoicha. You look at the smag and esates, that's what he says. Now, Rabbi say these two pshatim are not a machloikis, it's not a stira. The asay toiv kamoicha means we do what you expect him to do to you. The lois asay, that's taka kamoicha. That's taka literal. So we have two pshatim in this pasuk, Ve'havta Lere'acha Kamocha. Lamaisa, I saw in the Maisa ish klar, mamish, you see it clearly in Beis Samach Kuf Samach Vav, Am Kuf Samach Vav. Someone asked him, when is a person mevatel yaseh Ve'havta Lere'acha Kamocha? So he said that the ikki is daloch sani lechavrach lo yisavid. Chesed is wonderful, but where it's kamoicha mamish, that is regarding the zehirus. Now I want to ask you another question. Let's say a person doesn't have dalet minim, okay? So he decides, I have a good idea. He goes over to the person in shul that has a nice dalet minim and grabs it and runs away for 7 days. He said, what'd you do? I learned the Gemara in Bava Metzia Samach Beis, Chayecha Koidman. Of course he's wrong. Why is he wrong? There's the Pasha. Chayecha Koidman is when both are equal, or the water is yours in fact, then Chayecha Koidman. But you can't do an avla as Chayecha Koidman, right? But wait, but let's go a step further. Well, we could do better. We could do a lot better. Let's say someone goes over to the Gadol Hador and holds a gun to his head, and he's a serious Ritzeach, this person, and says, Gadol Hador, if you don't shoot the biggest Amoritz in this town, I'm going to shoot you. What should the Gadol Hador do? Chayecha Koidman is very poshut. I mean, this is the Gadol Hador and this is the Gadol Amoritz, right? Wrong. This is a Gemara that we all know. Psachim Chafayim at Beis. The Gemara says, Svarahu, our shayla Svarahu, that you know that the God's not going to kill the Amoretz. Why? Because my Chazi Dami Didach Sumak Tvei. Wait a second. We started with a Daraisa Chayecha Koidman. Now you're telling the Gadol Hador to get killed and not shoot the Amoretz. I Chayecha Koidman. So if you tell me it's another Gzeres HaKosiv, I'll figure it out. But tell me it's a Svara. The teretz is Chayecha Koidman only works when there's no avla. To go shoot someone else to save your life, he's doing Ritzicha. But we could do even more than that. There's something quoted b'shem Reb Chaim Briska. Reb Chaim said even more than that. He said, we would think if you have such a scenario, the biggest Sadik, the biggest Amoritz, it would be a Gzeres HaKosiv. So Reb Chaim said the Torah, the Rebbeinu Shalom wanted us to know al Pisvara, that every Yid is so precious that we don't know who's more chashiv. You know, we think, you know, he's a nobody. You don't know what the person what's doing by Yenim. And the Reb Chaim said it has to be a svara without a pasik. My chazi didam didach sumek tvei. Now again, this speaks volume of what it means al tibaz l'cholodam, and yikvoit chaver chavav alecha, and he's har bekvoit chavrechem. But what my point only is, yes, it's true, Chayecha Koidman, but that doesn't legitimize doing an avla, whether it's stealing dalat minim or killing someone. So here we have our second shot in Ve'havta Lere'acha Kamocha. It goes on regarding doing east avlis, daloch sani lechavrach lo yisavid, and yes, Chayecha Koidman is true, but you can't do an avla. But there's another point, and that's the Chsam Soifa on our parsha, on our pasuk in Parsh Kedoshim Ve'havta Lere'acha Kamocha. The Chsam Soifa says that he believes that yes, Chayecha Koidman is true, it's only in Gashmias. But it comes to Torah, there's no Chayecha Koidman. And the Lashon Chsam Soifa is B'chaye HaNetzach T'hainu B'limud HaTorah Chay V'lamad L'Acherim, even though he's giving up his own time. And that's why it's very medug Ve'havta Lere'acha Kamocha Zeh Klal Gadol B'Torah. So Taka in Chaye Nefesh and Gashmias, that's Bava Metzia Samach Beis Chayecha Koidman. In Torah, there's no Chayecha Koidman. Now, lest you think this is episode, you know, this is Ala Torah, it's a drushvart. Chsam Soifa in the Tshuva and Chayshim Mishpat Kuf Samach Dalid, he discussed the responsibilities of a Rav. And B'Seich Dvar, he says, if a person, even though he's learning in his time for learning, if someone comes, he needs help, even though he's losing his own learning, because Lagabi Torah shel Chaveroi Koidem shel Atzmoi. Now the emphasis, you hear this at first, and we would think it's almost Ipcha Mestavra. If for a few dollars, chayecha koidmin, shouldn't it be that for ruchnius, for Torah Kedoshah, chayecha koidmin, kiyem chayenu? And indeed, Rav Moshe in Even Ezer, Chelik Beis, Siman Chav, Chelik Gimel, Siman Chavav, it says Tavarim, Divrei Chasam Soifa, Temuyim Ma'oid. I can't understand it. The Torah V'adei Torah Se Kaidemes. Now, what did the Chasam Soifa hold? So Chasam must have held, like that famous word, they say, they asked the Rav Zisha, if you would be able to be Avram Avinu, would you change by Avram Avinu? Because what for? The Baruch Hashem has one Rav Zisha and one Avram Avinu, right? If there's only one mitzvah to be done, either you and the other person, so Mechatei, you go first. The Baruch will have one mitzvah, you the other person, okay? And you look at the Pele Yoy, it's an Erech Torah, he says that. He says, you want to do a mitzvah to give nachas ruach, so let the other person do it. Okay, it's a chiddush, but that's the way you're looking at it. But it could be, which is more mistavra, the Chasam Soifa does not say, chayech koy by all mitzvahs. If you look at the Lashon, it's clear. He says, chayin etzot ha'ayne b'limud ha'Torah. By limud ha'Torah, the atzlach of Torah is not b'derech ha'teva. To understand Torah, the oimik of Torah, the tifkeit of Torah, it's always yagata u'matzasa. So how are you zoycha to Torah? If you do the Ratzon Hashem. What's the Ratzon Hashem amol? To give to others. Chasam Soifa held, that's part of chayecha koidmin in Torah, to help someone else. We'll soon see a medrash in Bahar that says this, but there are two esberim in the Chasam Soifa, why it's very yitachin, that there's no chayecha koidmin in Torah or mitzvahs. But if you notice, the nafkamina is the Chasam Soifa going on all mitzvahs, or only Torah? If the first hezbollah, the Baruch has nachas, many mitzvah. But if you look at the Lashon again, to me it's borer. In both places, the Chasam Soifa is only talking about learning. Now Rav Moshe quotes the Chasam Soifa. He says, "Veahavta Lere'acha Kamocha hu b'Torah uva mitzvos." That there's no chayecha koidmin. He even asks a kasha on the Chasam Soifa, "I am mitzvahs chayecha koidmin." But the Zechisi Love, the Chasam Soifa is talking about limud haTorah. The Rebbe said, before you apply this lamaisa, I'll tell you one more pshat, Veahavta Lere'acha Kamocha, and it's not a steer to the first pshatim, and they're all emes. Someone told me, he says, his wife spends so much on clothing, it's not fair, he can't afford it. So my first reaction is, you just got married? Don't you know that women spend on clothing? But I told him, you forgot a Gemara. Because Re'ez Apella, the Gemara in Yevama Samach Beis, ha'oyev azishtei ki gufay, ha'machab de yoyse mi gufay, alav ha'kasevoyma, there's a pasuk, adatik shalom alecha. So for us, that we're sensitive to what it means, Avas Yisrael, this is a double chiddush. First of all, oyevay kegufa, it's not just kamoicha kegufa, and machab de yoyse mi gufa, more than yourself. Not only it's equal to me, more than me. Zok Marsha, what is mechab the yoyse mi gufa? In begadim, because that's the covet. He quotes Gemara in Shabbos, Kufiyat Gimel. So there's a din Gemara that to spend more on your wife's clothing than your own. Oh, so then I was thinking, could be that's when Veahavta Lere'acha Kamocha is literal. Don't forget, when we say in Hilchas Chanukah, Ishtay Kegufay. The Chazon Ish writes in a letter that it should be like Yad Yamin, the Yad Smoil. Oh, but Rabbi said we could do better. And I was thinking, and this probably could be carved to the emes. You say, you send someone an invitation, L'choyda Rav Agoyin, V'rayosei. What does Rayosei mean? His wife. It's all over Shir Hashir, friend, wife, whatever it is. Could be Veahavta Lere'acha Kamocha is like the Lashon Rayosei. And therefore, regarding a wife, then it's taka literally kamoicha. We all know the Gemara in Kedushin, Mem Aleph, and Nida Yud Zayin. The Gemara learns halachis of how careful we have to be with a wife. Shema Yira Badava Maguna, Vatayra Amar Veahavta Lere'acha Kamoicha. So Rav Schwab Zechan al-Bracha once said, he said, the only time that it's shaykh Veahavta Lere'acha Kamoicha is by your wife. So he said, the Gemara does not say, if you're going to see a dava maguna, you'll divorce her. Because then that's not going to happen. You'll be happily married. But you're not going to be, to the nth degree, kamoicha. Oy, that's a problem. It's almost like we said, the real Veahavta Lere'acha Kamocha could be with a wife. You'll say, this sounds made up. Re'acha means a friend. I'll tell you a dove pella, but I don't mean any comparison, Chashem. But listen to this. The Yad Ramah, one of the Rishonim, if that in Sanhedrin, Daf Nun Beis, Amid Beis, he asks a question. 6 Gemaras say, after Kamocha is how to give a Rosh Misas Bezdin. Is that Re'acha? He said yes, and I quote his Lashon. Yes, the Farsh after Ve'ahavta Kamocha, Rosh Becha Shenis Chayev Misa. He's learning Re'acha is Lashon Rash Becha. So whether it's Rash Becha or Rayasi, and I don't mean compare the two, Chas v'Shalom, but you see the pasuk has different shatim. Re'acha, Rash Becha, and maybe Rayasi. And again, all the pshatim are emes. It's not a stira. And the Arizal said in the Vienna Welt, the first focus is how do you treat your bnei habayis. Maybe it's meduyik because that's what Ve'ahavta Lere'acha is all about. But let's chazer over what we learned and we'll apply this to Maisa. First of all agree Ve'ahavta Lere'acha Kamocha is the klal gadol b'Torah. It's the klal Torah kula. The Alach Sani Lecharech Leisavet is probably the Ikka Pshat Ve'ahavta Lere'acha Kamocha. The Asay Toiv is what you expect someone to do to you. Probably, or maybe certainly, there's more of a Chiyav, Ishtoi Kigufai, and the Chsam Soif is Chiddush. By Torah, there is no Chayecha Kodim. So now let's apply this to the various shaylas. First of all, let's start with a simple shayla. 2 people are on a deserted island, and they only have, and one has a kazayis matzah, and that's all they have. Should it be a nice guy and give it to the other person? Zok Rav Moshe in that tshuva? No. That's bitlasei. This is a clear-cut case of chayecha koidman. Now Rav Moshe asked on the Chsam Soifa, you have to give it to the other person. Doesn't make sense. But again, Lani is daiti. The Chsam Soifa is only talking about mitzvahs, not only talking about Torah, not mitzvahs. So it wouldn't be sure. Now Lamaisa, there's an earlier source, the Tveres Yisrael and Brachas Perik Dalid, Ois Beis and Boyaz. He says that Hamaspal Ba'at Chaveroi is a skula. But typically you go first, and mitzvahs you go first. If you have only one opportunity to do a mitzvah, don't give it away, you have to keep it for yourself. And we'll soon see the Shari Tshuva in Ar Chaim says this as well. Let's say someone very much wants to do mitzvah kisi adam, but he doesn't have an opportunity. And punkt, he's walking, the Seres Mei Tshuva, and someone just shechted a chicken by the Kapara Center. He runs over, grabs a bit of an offer, and grabs the mitzvah. He says, what do you do? Chayecha koidman. Right or wrong? Terribly wrong. In fact, the Gemara says in Chul and Pei Zayin, it's Kapas and Chayshe Mishpat, Shin Pei Beis, he has to pay a hefty kanas. Why? There's like we said, Chayecha koidman doesn't legitimize doing avlis. But I'll tell you a dava pella. Someone asked Rav Ozna, and this is a mitzvah lefarsim because it's the sensitivity that a gadol has to see through, the sheicha that we sometimes it blinds us. In Shevet Alev Yud Aleph Shin Bey, someone asked Rav Ozna, people they need a surgery, they need to get it to a doctor, and they have to wait 6 months. So they use Protectia, he writes it out, and someone calls, and Bekitza, they have an appointment next week for the surgery. So someone asked Rav Ozna, is it right? What does that mean, you got an appointment? Do you think the doctor gave up his vacation for you? No. What happened? Someone called and they bumped someone else for 6 months. So is it right? You bump someone because you need a surgery? Maybe it's chayecha koidman. Maybe that's the heta. Rav Ozna says, what do you mean? That's not chayecha koidman. To push someone off from his surgery, that's an avla. He says, and there's no heta chayecha koidman. He says, if the other person needs it, pekuach nefesh, or it's a safek pekuach nefesh. You're not allowed to do that. So with this clarity in Das Torah, to take someone else's chus, that could be a safek with tzicha. Protection doesn't give you a heta to bump someone. That's not chayecha koidman. More pashit, that people are waiting online, waiting for a parking spot, or waiting to pull in, and someone grabs it. Chayecha koidman? No, that's a ganef. I mean, it's a ganef mamish, but it's not chayecha koidman. That's an avla. That's missing the point. A lot has been written. You learn Masechet Bava Kama, how much you have to pay. But is there an issa to be mazik? So I'll pay. Big deal. I'm a rich person. I don't mind paying. So some say Hashavas Aveda, some say this is a Geneva, some say Bal Tashchis. The Imrei Bin and Chayshe Mishpat, Eida Simel Amagimel quotes Yam Shel Shloima. Being mazik, even Amanas the Shalom, is an Issa Derais Ve'ahavta Lere'acha Kamocha. a simple expression of the Allah Sani L'Chavrach Lo Yisavit. No one wants your money. They want you not to be mazik. Next question is more of a tricky question. Have it in the yeshiva and the camp. You have a room with bachrim, and one bach is always that early bird. He likes to wake up, fat talks to learn, which is wonderful. But he's waking up his roommates. They can't fall asleep, and he's saying Chayecha Koidman, and they're saying, what about us? So Reb Shlomo Zalman Alicha Shloima and Tefillah Amud Kufay in Aleph, he says if it's the derech to wake up at that time, whatever gets for Shachris or a little before for Shteitzer, you're allowed to wake up. And the roommate says, why don't you wake me up? I like to come to Baruch Hu of the Aliyas, You're allowed to wake up. But let's say he wakes up when not the derech, so you're allowed to wake up. Find a different room. Today they have these vibrating alarm clocks that wake you up without noise. But you can't use the mitzvah to hurt someone. I always say they should have a room of early birds waking up early in the morning. But the problem is it's not a very popular room. As you know, it's not easy getting up early. But one thing I will say that the ikke is daf trachten von jenem. The same is true. People learn late at night. They come in and they wake up their roommates when they go to sleep. That's an avla. No doubt about it. Torah is yikar mipninim, but as the Alter Nabotka once said, if you take a pearl and throw it in someone's face, it hurts. Torah could hurt. Next question about the winter, summer. It happens all year, whether it's opening the window or closing it, or putting on the air conditioner or closing it. So it's most want it closed, some want it open, or vice versa. So the emphasis is it's chayecha koidman of both parties, and no one owns the air conditioner, no one owns the shul. So this is a beautiful chaysha mishpat issue. Oid chazoin lamoyed the Chaim Kanievsky in the Shari Amuna in Peya Perik Dalid. He quotes a Yisrael Salanta that says that even a yachid can be moicha during the winter, and even a yachid can be moicha during the summer. It's totally in what it is with the time of the year. Winter, windows are closed. Summer, windows are open. Reb Chaim very respectfully says it's hard to understand why is it totally in winter and summer. He proves it from another place. It's totally in Roy versus Miyut. So Lamaisa, that's really a Chaysha Mishpat Sugya. But one thing we will say that Chayecha Koidman is not a factor. To say I need it and it's hurting someone else, that's not Ogaler to Sugya. Chayecha Koidman doesn't legitimize Avlis. And plus, don't forget, and this should be a very strong Shaychad, doesn't only mean if you moichel someone else, it means if you give in, if you mavata, you forgo. Rav Steinemann b'Soif Yomov was on a campaign, literally. Whenever he spoke about being mavata. And he said, because here's the Yiddish tzaras, and so much of machlokes is because people are not mavata. And he said these words, and I quote, L'shayin Kotchay, Nara yisi v'gamzo kanti, v'lo re'isi mavata mafsid. I never saw a mavata that loses. So someone heard my shir, and he took a picture of Steinman when he was mom. He looked ancient, he must have been 101 years old. And he put next to it that words, and he gave it out, and his people put on the refrigerator. It's a wonderful chizuk. Nara yisi v'gamzo kanti, 101 years of experience. V'lo re'isi mavata mafsid. So, it's hard to paskin about windows and air conditioner, but I guarantee you, if someone tak is hot and he doesn't open the window because someone else is cold, his davening will be much more effective. That's a davening that Baruch will cherish. He's doing it with the school of being mavata. The Ramban in Parshas Veschanan speaking about Asisa Yoshev Atoiv, and Dr. Ramban Alosh, I'm almost afraid to say it. Why is the Baruch promised so much schar? Man yitavlach uvasav rosh tesaoretz. Dr. Ramban ki the Baruch oyev ki oyev haytoy vayosha. It's the Baruch Shalom's kaviyach soft spot. You're going to have yashris beyond the Shus Hadin. Oh, all doors are open for such a person. So again, the schus of being mavata in these cases, windows and air conditionings, whatever it is, person that goes with the Lefnim Shus Hadin has a gavaldig schus. Someone asked Rav Moshe in Ebenezer, Chelik Bey, Simon Aleph. He has two daughters, and the older one is Alangish Esra, taking her time. And the younger wants to start first, but the older one feel bad. In other words, L'halacha, Moshe says, we don't paskin like Lavan, that Tzir Lefnei Bechira is awesome. That's where most places can go. But you can hurt the older sister's feelings. So Moshe said, first of all, it's not terrible bezoyin. I mean, a lot of people take their time. They take their time. It takes longer. And Mustaver, he says that you can't tell someone who's more matzliach than someone else not to be matzliach. If the younger one finds the shidduch, how could you prevent the younger one? Because the older one. And he writes that I don't see any issa. You're not doing anything shaloi kahoigin. And he says, v'hu davabar. So I guess in this case, it would be a chayecha koidmin, where the ill feelings maybe are unjustifiable, even though Maisa mentioned or I mentioned, the older girl will feel bad. But the Moshe says you can't stop someone. It becomes a magachir, a rav, he opens a business, and he's matzliach more than his competitor. So he should go out of business. He's hurting his competitor. It's a world that, you do your best. Now, I know it's a chiddush, but that's what Moshe says at the end. V'hu davabar. Question: someone has a relative who has a very severe medical crisis and needs a lot of money, and they ask him to go help, raise funds. And he's balbat tashid. He doesn't want to go collecting. He says, but your friend, your relative or friend, whatever, needs money. It's b'kuach nefesh. But chayecha koyben, I'm embarrassed. So Re'ez Apella, the Abshleim Klug in Chayshemish B'Simen Tav Chavav has even a bigger chiddush, and he says that to save someone's life, if it's a bezoyin for you, you're potter. And he says, just like by Shavas Haveda Shalcha Koidim, it says Bikuach Nefesh is also limited to Shalcha Koidim. And if a person has to undergo Busha, he's potter. Rav Moshe in Yerdeya Chelik Beis Kuf Ayin Daled Ois Gimel is extremely critical of that psak. And he said, Pashas Mechidas Kvoid Go'oinoi, it's a toyis, Bikuach Nefesh Doicha Kolater Kula, even a person's personal bizyoinis. So Avada, Rav Moshe's svara is very understandable. So again, if it's a medical crisis, a person has to overcome the busha. The Satmar Rav would send his gevirim to collect money. They said, Rebbe, I'll give you all the money. He goes, no, I want you to go collect. It's a training in Godla Ma'aisa, Yosef and Ha'aisa. Maybe that's why there's a greater schar for collecting than giving, because it's harder. But whatever the case is, this is an example of a fum tzara agra. It's not an example of chayecha koidin. Someone asked me, he was asked to learn Mishnayos for a relative, but am I going to lose my schusim chayecha koidin? First I told him, a yid doesn't live that way. You got but trachten for yenim. A nifta needs schusim, you learn. But I also told him, again, I might be wrong, but I don't believe if you learn for a nifta, you lose the schusim. The oldest Yisrael, we say this all the time, the Medrash in Devarim, Daled, Ois, Hey, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shimuli. Just listen to me. She'ein Adav Shemei Li Umafsid. You never, ever, ever lose by doing the Ratzon Hashem. You can't, you won't lose by doing the Ratzon Hashem. So if L'maisa, the Doirei Doiris, Yidden learned L'zeich and Nishmas and Nifta, I don't believe anybody will lose an iota because of that, of doing a mitzvah. Maybe the pshat is like, they say, maybe Kener mitzvah Torah or it's like a lichtala, you light one from the other, so the first one doesn't lose, they're just spreading it. But again, I don't think there's any problem here of chayecha koidmin when you learn, like the Yidden are doing for Doiris. A challenging question is, let's say someone wants a mitzvah, to do a mitzvah, let's say he wants to be a moil for a certain baby, and someone else is also going for that milah. Can you be aggressive? Call up the Avia Ben, how you do, how's the baby? I'll come over, just look at the baby, just if you want. No, I don't mean anything particular, but I'll look at the baby just to check. Be a little pushy to get the mitzvah, not an avla, but aggressive. So here we come to a big yisoid in chayecha koidmin. The Shari Tshuva in the end of Hilchas Pesach, Taf Pei Beis Ois Aleph, Sikot Aleph, he quotes a Beis Yehuda Yehuda Ayash that says that there were two people in jail or in a midbar, and they only have one kazayis. What should they do? So he says, Kol de Olam Gvar, which in English means fight it out. So he says it can't be. If it belongs to one of them, how can you fight it out? That's called mitzvah b'aveira. So he says there's no doubt about it. He's talking about that it's hefka, whatever the case is, and two are in the same aisle with this kazayis. So he says, then if it belongs to nobody, so go the extra mile. Kol olam gvar. But listen to his words. He says, I we know, the Gemara in Bava Metzia says, Shalachok koyim shechal adam, so why can I even fight when it's his? That's an avla. But then he has the following. Afilu dava sheyesh b'hem b'shum chaya nefesh, of course chayav koidman. Gashmias and ruchnias, you go first. So if you're not doing an avla, then kol olam gvar. And he adds, because of a kiva darsha chayecha koidman, ve'im be'iske gufay. We say that kol shkein be'iske nefashos alachas kama v'chama. So he's learned like Rav Moshe, not like the Chassam Sofer, at least by mitzvahs. That by mitzvahs, kol shkein chayecha koidman. But then he adds, and listen to this, when Boaz wanted to do the mitzvah with Rus, but there was someone before him, the Goyal. So he told him, B'yoyim knoischa miyad Rus hamoyaviyah. He stressed Rus hamoyaviyah. So he quotes this, the Shari Tshuva quotes from a Gerish Shmuel. I couldn't get a hold of that sefer, but it's a Friedrich sefer on Rus, Perik Daled Pasik Tes, that Boaz wanted to do this special mitzvah, but he wasn't second place online. So he wanted to scare off the Goyal. He didn't do an avla, he didn't lie, he didn't give him a bad eitzah, he just stressed Rus hamoyaviyah. So the person will have second thoughts. So he says, even though you can't take from someone else to do a mitzvah, that's a mitzvah of Aveira, but kol shaloi zocha adayin, hem kamid bahamufka lakol, and yuma b'chol echad b'chol adam nitztav lahashlim es nafshay ulazakais b'mitzvahs. Chayecha koidmin applied in this case. He didn't do an avla. He didn't say don't do it. That's an issa d'raisa of neiva. He just did a smart approach, and he said that's the heta that Yaakov with the b'chayra, with the brachis. He saw Esav anyhow. Vayivas Esav as b'chayra. So he did it in a way that it wasn't an avla. So rule number one he's saying is you can't do an avla. You can't grab matzah, that's matzah gzula. But rule number two is, when it's hefka, go the extra mile. Be aggressive within the limits of halacha. Avada, you can't do an avla. Genevas das is an avla. Ben Yoina in Shari Tshuva, right, in Gimel Pei Dalet, it's an ashmer rabba. But it wasn't Genevas das, and it wasn't sheker. And I saw in the Sefer Makar, the Pirish Makar Chaim on the Sefer Chasidim Kufnan Hey Yud Aleph has three Makairis from Chagiga Yud Gimel, Brachas Nun Gimel, Yishalmi and Hayriyas, that to do a mitzvah you're allowed to be aggressive as long as it's not an avla. Now, of course, there might be a thin line, but that's why he says V'yareisam Lekecha. Be careful. So I was thinking that applies to our case as well. If the father had a baby, he's not mechuyev to another moil, not mechuyev to anybody. If you want the mila, go for it. You could use any ways that you could do it. It's like a business deal. Kol hakoydim zocha. The Oirech Meisharim in Tes Zayin points to a Gemara in Brachas Nun Gimel Amid Beis for this yisoid. Famous story of Rabbi Bar Chana was traveling and he forgot the bench. So he says, I left a yoina dehava, a golden yoina behind. So they went back. So Gemara said, why didn't he say he has to go back for benching? Because they wouldn't go back. But Yoina Dehava, they went back. So what does Yoina Dehava mean? It wasn't a shekel. What does Yoina Dehava mean? Either a gold Yoina or it means a mitzvah. So he says, to get a mitzvah, you're allowed to say, Lish l'mishtama ba'ape b'trei api. Das yeah. But more than that, no. So that would be the answer to our question, that you're allowed to go after a mitzvah. You want to be a moil, be aggressive. And I found afterwards in a bigger chiddush, the Sefer Bris says, even if another moil was already interested in the mitzvah, so there might be onim hapach b'charor in a chayshemishmer issue, but not in this case. The Dasikanim in Parshas Toldes Chafei Lamed Beis adds a bit, and he says, "Vayivas Esav," because Esav already was mavazit. So Yaakov felt, I can't leave the b'chayr with Esav because he's going to abuse it. And Zok the Dasikanim, I found in Sefer Rabbi Yehuda Chassid, which is Sefer Chassidim, if a Rasha has a Sefer Torah, you're allowed to fool him to get it back. Because you keep it in the Rasha's hand, he's going to abuse it. Now, we don't have this exact lashon in Sefer Chassidim, but in Taf Saf Kuf Chaf Hey, there's a similar lashon. If you know someone stole something, you're allowed to buy it at a cheap price and fool him at a cheap price, because he won't give it to you otherwise, because you're getting back what's not really his. That's a little different. But the Paiskim use this whole idea. Let's say there's a reform shul that's nothing more than a social club, and they have a kosher Sefer Torah that's laying b'mazai, and all this activity is going on in front of the Sefer Torah. So do whatever you can to be pai the shvuyim. Who's the shavui? Heilige Sefer Torah. And they apply this Sefer Chassidim, and this Yehuda Chassid, and this Dasikanim. So that's the only one case you could use a little bit beyond just Chachma, because there's a pidyon shvuyim of the Sefer Torah. Someone wanted an esrig, and the moicha wouldn't sell it to him because he has exclusive customers. So he says, I'm buying this my Rosh Hashiva. Now, Lamaisa, he doesn't give it to his Rosh Hashiva, but he pays a fair price. That's an avla, because you lied. You're not buying for Rosh Hashiva. You chayecha kaidmin, but not for an avla. That's an issa. So you have to be careful when to apply it. Listen to a Anyana Diyayma that's more challenging than it seems. Two people are on a desert island, and they only have one only has a little bit of oil. He could light the mahadrin, but his friend has nothing. If he gives his friend something, he will not do mahadrin. Who goes first? So we would say, Chayecha Koidman, I'm to give up my mahadrin for him. He's an Einis. Einis want a patre. There's no avla. I'm not taking his. But where's the cheshbon? You could mekayim the mitzvah perfectly, ikka mitzvah, and he'll do the same. Why not think of someone else? And this seems to be the sheet of Magen Avram. In Tov Reish Ayin Aleph in the beginning, has this very shaila. He says, Mutiv sheyadik b'chol layla echad. Even if he means 8 days of not having hidur, but let someone else have the mitzvah as well. So I saw if Nissen Karelitz and Chutshani and Chanukah Amachin Chavez asked, why is this so? It's mine. I want to do the mitzvah b'shtei Musa. He's an Einis. Why should I give it up for him? What about Chayecha Koidman? He says, I'll say maybe because Chanukah is different, because Pesumei Nisa, and if you light yourself, there's one Pesumei Nisa. If you give it to him, so there's two Pesumei Nisas, so you're getting more Pesumei Nisa. So there can't be, because the Magen Avraham himself, in the end of Tafra and Reish Nun Ches quotes a Mata Moshe. Listen to this. Someone has an Esrig Miyuchid. You know, today everything's Miyuchid, but there's a Miyuchid Aleph, Aleph, Aleph. He has a Dalminim that's special. And his friend has nothing. But here's the catch. This Yid that has the Miyuchid is going for Yom Tiv in a city that they have an Esrig there. So he could use someone else's, or the Shul's Esrig. His friend is living alone and there's no Esrig at all. So the Magen Avram says, quoting Mata Moshe, give your Esrig Miyuchid to him and you use the Shul's Esrig. I don't know how many people would say that today, but that's the Heilige Magen Avram's Das Torah. So Zokti, when this is Karels, what do you see from here? That even if it's not Pesumei Nisa, you have to give it. Why? Kol Yisrael Arevim Zelazeh. I guess Arevim Lashon of sweet. The Yid's also a Zisa Yid. Help him out. The Machnechayim in Gimel Yutes has a shaila. Someone had a minik. He lit a big nair, a big candle for a whole Leil Shabbos. It burned the whole night. That was Zaynik Shabbos. And someone get right before Shabbos. I don't have any neirs for Ner Chanukah, for Ner Shabbos. Help me. He says, cut part of yours and give it to him. You'll get a mitzvah and he'll get a mitzvah. See, that's part of Chayecha Koidman. Yes, that's part of Chayecha Koidman. Kol Yisrael Arevim Zelazeh. The Mechazalaz and Chelik Beis Lamed Ches has a shaila. It's hard to know what he means, but he says if someone has two kazeisim and he can eat both of them, or give one to someone else, give it to someone else. Why? And it seems that he can have one for the first night and one for the second night. But give it to someone else and you both have the deraisa for tonight. Now it's hard to understand because what about tomorrow night? The Rabbanan means I have to give my mitzvah. And Taka, I saw the Machnechayim in Chelik Aleph Simon Chavtes has this very shaila, and he says V'tzarachian. The B'tzei Lachachman in Chelik Gimel Mem Gimel also discusses and brings this Minchas Alaza. The Minchas Alaza is Taka Chiddush, but it shows what it means. Kol Yisrael Arevim Zelazeh. A shaila that comes up, unfortunately, gets a little sticky when there are two yahrzeit. Two people have yahrzeit, and on Monday and Thursday, only one aliyah. There's only one amid. Now we're talking they're both equal. Both have yahrzeit, not just one has on the shviga, one has, both on the parents' yahrzeit. So what do? Kol olam gvar is not practical, and shul start fighting, on a busy Monday and Thursday. Lamaisa, there's a third Magen Avram, and that's in Nun Gimel Sivkat and Chavav. Ein liskaitet avor shum mitzvah. Sherei shaninu hatznuim moishchen es yedeim milechem aponim. This is based on a Gemara in Yuma, Daf Lametes, Mavaldika expression. The Gemara says there wasn't enough of lechem aponim to go around, so hatznuim, the edla, the tznuim, hatznei leches people, they retracted. Hagar grorim, the fresses, pardon me, they grabbed. So the Magen Avram, we're not fresses. We're tznuim. It comes a mitzvah, don't fight. For which mitzvah? Abavor shum mitzvah, any mitzvah. Wow, that's a chiddush. Maybe it's pashit. We hope va'oisa nachas ruach liyotzrei. There's ever that machlokes give the Baruch Shem nachas. The Torah's Chaim, that's the son of the Machne Chaim in Nun Gimel and the Sivkat and Chaf Aleph, he discusses this. Don't forget, he was a big kanoi, don't forget. And he says, because you can't fight for a mitzvah, because a mitzvah is nachas ruach to the Rebbeinu Shalom, and Ritzoni Shal HaKadosh Baruch Hu is D'Ocher Da'achei Noyam, not to fight. The Rambam Paskins, in their Chanukah and their Shabbos, what goes first? Ner Shabbos, why? Kol HaTorah Kula Nit Nas Shalom B'Olam. The Kavachayim in Nun Gimel Tzadik Vav writes this very shaila. He says, if by giving in, that's the schus for your father's neshama. Shtikasa izu ischar v'zeh kvoid v'nachas ruach la'aviv. So avada chayecha koidman. But sometimes chayecha koidman means to be mavata. They say, Lanta once gave up the amid for someone else. Someone says, you want to be a tzaddik, it's fine. What about your parents, the yahrzeit? Because my father has a bigger nachas ruach to his neshama because I gave in. And that's what the Paiskim are saying. That's Pashit, Ein Adam Shemei Ali Umafsid. And basically, I also saw the Biya'ima in Chelik Zayin, Chav Gimel, was someone donated Paroichis, was a Chanishmas, a brother. And a few years later, someone else donated, and it turned into a Machlaikis. He says, you want a schus for your brother? Then retract. There's a schus, whether you have the Paroichis or not, that's irrelevant. When a person's mavata, that is the greatest chus. And now we could say achrein chaviv or achrein hichbid, and that is the question of limud HaTorah. Could I drop a chavrusa if I get better? Could I stop going to a shir when I could get better, or I learn better at home? So the emphasis we might say this is machlekes Rav Moshe and the Chassam Sofer. Chassam Sofer holds there's no chayecha koid by Torah. Moshe holds there is, but it's not true. Rav Moshe, in the same tshuva where he takes exception to Chassam Sofer, he says, although chayecha koidman in Torah, but I paskin that a person has to give up, and he writes this clearly, a maisa on his man, a tenth of his time to help others. And he brings a mavel to Kirihaya. Rav Preida had a Talmud that he had to explain in 400 times. He couldn't get a better Talmud. Teretz Rav Preida held that's his obligation, al tzaloim b'Torah, to share his Torah with others. And Rav Moshe says that a person has to give up of his time. Now, if you think that's tough, in Dibras Moshe Kedushin Simon Nun Sivkat and Tes, he brings again the Ma'isa of Rav Preida, and he says if someone is medaktik in his time too much, he quotes the Gemara in Bava Metzia Lamed Gimel, Hamadaktik bekach, Hamakayim atzim bekach, Seifahu boladei kach. And Rav Moshe says it's wrong to think only about yourself. You won't lose, you'll only gain by giving of your time to others. And he quotes the famous Lashon of the Yishalmi, B'toich shechasidim heim, Teirason mizbareches, not just mishtameres like the Bavli. Do we need more than Rav Moshe Feinstein that wasn't only the Poisik Ador, but he was the Masmid Ador, and he gave his life for Klal Yisrael? Isn't that derech of Gedolei Olam? But the point is, that's part of Chayecha Koidman. Bacham, they're very much motivated to steig, and it's wonderful. But you have to hear that Chayecha Koidman, part of that is living like a Yid. There's no doubt about it that it's not a stira, because the Hatzlacha of Torah is when a person gives. You know, the Rav Shimon has a beautiful pshat in Takadam with the Shara Yosha. Asa to asa, what's the svar in it? He says, Pashit. If you hire a worker and he's extremely devoted, you're going to rehire him and you're going to expand his obligations, right? Because you trust him. Every person in this world is on a mission. He's given time and he's given money. What are you going to do with your time and money? If you share it with others, aser, then b'shvil shetis asher. Oh, I could trust you. You're someone that I would like to work with. So if it works by mominus, I believe asa v'asa, b'shvil shetis asher, works with Torah. And you'll see it's a Beferish Medrash. In Bahar Lamed Daled, the Medrash spells it out, mamish. Oshiv v'rosh nivgashu, oisa kulam Hashem. A rich and a poor meet, the Baruch made them both. What's pshat? Says the Medrash. A rich person in Torah is approached by a poor person, says, help me, I can't do it on my own. If he says, no, I'm too busy, the Baruch will make the poor Talmud Chacham, poor and das, rich, and the rich poor. Now the question is why? Why is he punished? He says, what do you mean? You're not faithful, I don't trust you. But let's say the rich helps the poor, Oisa kulam Hashem, they're both going to steig. What's the pshat? It's not a school, it's pashut. A person is given talents, money, time to share. If you're trustworthy, you'll get a renewed contract. B'shvil shetis asher. And that's why it's so important to hear this, that a person has to give. Now, I must mention for B'nai Yeshiva, Rav Shlomo Zalman, Alicha Shloima, and Tefillah, he says that now is the time to steig. Taka. The Chazon Ish said, and I quote his lashon, the zikui hachi gadol, the Klal Yisrael is liskais as Klal Yisrael b'gdol Yisrael. So someone that has a future has to know how important it is steiging in realizing his future. But basically, chayecha koidman is true. But part of chayecha koidman is betracht von jenem. Now we could approach the sticky shaila of dropping chavrus, changing chavrusa, when it's a chayecha koidman, the other person is going to lose. So I'm not talking about he's doing it for any other reason but pashut for his learning. So Rapam told me, when I asked him, he says, avada chayecha koidman. But if you have any suffix that maybe you'll steig with this one, the schus of chesed and Torah will guarantee the hatzlacha. Because like the Gemara says, if you don't cry on Shabbos, that'll be a schus. Now, this is hard to give klolim, but lamaisa, if the other person will fall apart, you're talking about a pikuach nefesh. But l'idach gisa, if you're falling apart, so sometimes you have to give a person an ultimatum. Listen, we have to start changing a little bit. I can't go on like this. A person has to do it with a tremendous sensitivity, because it might be din nefashis for you, Torah, but for the other person also. But it has to make it a serious shaila. Again, a person has his own negiyas, ask someone else. Stopping to go to a shir when the Rav will feel bad is also, it's a pikuach nefesh on both ends. But I always tell people the best thing is you tell the Rav, listen, I enjoyed the shir very much, but now it works out better for my learning. Give him a gift, write it in something, inscribe, I learned so many years from you. If you do it with a sensitivity, then it makes it easier. It's not just you're just discarding someone else. But the ik is to remember, people say, I heard stories that there was kapedas and people lost. I don't know. Gemara says, Pnina Shem Shemayim, the skavna, look what happened to her. But basically, it has to be done with tremendous sensitivity. And again, if you do it with a heart, say, listen, my schedule changed. I love the shir. I appreciate it. Then it makes it much easier to understand. And let me leave you with one more word, I guess, in Yonah D'Yoyma, in a very, very real way. We just learned Parashat Vayeshev, and it's interesting. There are two people, a Chazal were made with Hashem Shemayim. Tamar and Eishes Potiphar. But you look at the end of the parsha, and all of a sudden there's a world of a difference. Tamar became the Baba of Melech HaMashiach, and Eishes Potiphar went down in infamy, the biggest Rashanta. What happened? Teretz is both with Hashem Shemayim. But the question is, when something went wrong, what now? Tamar decided, Mutiv sheyapil atzma techkif shena'esh. The ends don't justify the means, and chayecha kayim does not apply to an avla, and she was willing to go to the nth degree of Mesiras Nefesh. not to hurt someone. That is a ratzon that the Baruch Shem tells us, like we said, Ein Adam Shemei Liu Mafsi. You're not going to lose. You're being burnt at the stake. Don't worry. Oid Chazoin L'Moyed. Look what happened to Tamar. Potiphar decided, I'm taking the law into my own hands. Chayecha Koidman. She broke the rules. Once you broke the rules, then it's all over. So, Bemis, it's a very sensitive question. All these questions. But I'll leave you with a tefillah that we should always say when we have these shilas. I saw the Amshel Shlomo writes this, Ish Yirei Elokim Asher Bo L'Taher, he wants to do the right thing. Yoyer Lo Min HaShamayim Derech HaYosha B'Kav Emtzoi, the Baruch Shem will give you Habo L'Tayim Messiah Noise Afer Chanukah to you all. Okay. Whoever wants to leave could leave. We'll just make the second quickly. There's no doubt about it. Our Kol Torah Kula is the Klal Gadol B'Torah is after Ve'ahavta Kamocha. The Pashat Pshat is an attitude. What you expect him to do to him. Him to do to you, do to him. The second Pshat is the Loch Sani, the Zehiris in the Sur Meirah, that has to be Kamocha. We said a third Pshat, I think is Emes by Ishtay Kegufay or Yoisemi Gufay. The Chasam Sofer had a Chiddush that regarding Torah, there's no Chayecha Koidman. But the fact that there are 6 Gemaras how to give Misa to a Rasha speaks volume. Lere'acha Lere'acha Kamocha. Chayecha Koidman is a klal, but it doesn't legitimize doing avlas because that's wrong. My chazis applies even by a gadol adar and amoritz because that's breaking the rule of doing something wrong. If somebody only has one kazayis of matzah or any mitzvah for that matter, you go first. To give it away is wrong. Chayecha Koidman. To grab a mitzvah is also wrong. Same because it's an avla. Mazik is a form of after Ve'ahavta Kamocha, the is of it. Protectia is only mutter when it doesn't ba'avel someone else. When it's a question of who's first, but not to push someone else away. Waking up early or coming late at night, waking up roommates or other people is an avla, and that can't be done if that's not the derech or the right zman. Open a window or close a window, the better would be to be mavata, but the klal is you go basaroiv. The Tetzirah of Nei HaBechira is mutter, you don't have to worry about the feelings of the Bechira. Do a mitzvah, even if it's bushas to collect money, it's not bushas, it's from Tzara Agra. Learning for an ifta is only expanding the schus, not limiting it. Being aggressive in mitzvahs, we have a raya from Yaakov and Boyez, but it can't be an avla. You have to draw the line between avlas and aggressive. Trying to get a schus, moyel, sandik is okay. Limiting oil or dalet minim or anything else, share it when it's shaykh. 2 yards-eiten, again, the schus of mivata is a better schus. Ein l'skoiter avor shum mitzvah is the klal. Limar ha-Torah chayecha koidman, a part of chayecha koidman is oisa kulam Hashem, give to others. Rav Moshe says give 10% of one's learning time, and Rav Shlomo Zalman said the same lashon, ma'is in time. And basically, the change of chavrusas or leaving a shir, do it with sensitivity, and the ikka is Ish Yirei Elokim Habo L'Tayim Messiahs.
Valdig. B'Shem English, I'd like to thank Rabbi Smith for the wonderful shir, and thank Rabbi Rosenfeld, the Reishil Nishmas Ima Yechevet Bas Rabbi Yoel. Rabbi say you can help English Torah sponsor shir, and that's also you can learn all day and give money for English Torah at the same time. Gewaldige Zikr Rabbi. Rabbi Chaim Akasha Emme. Rotze Kodesh Baruch Hu Zak soll fikir geben Torah mitzvah shenem an Chovot man Tzidka Yagdel Torah v'Yade Kaddish.